my name is Wendy Reed, and we're going to learn a little bit about proofs today. Now, what proofs are is basically just logical steps of reasoning. Now, before we actually get into proofs, I need to teach one topic, and that is CPCTC. CPCTC just stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, and the letters come from the words, the CPCTC. We use this to prove that parts of triangles congruent after you've proven the triangle's congruent. For example, we learned in one video that if I have two triangles that look like this, then these triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Okay? Now, if I know the triangles are congruent, I've already shown that all the sides are congruent, but if the triangle is congruent, then the angles have to be congruent as well. So I know that this angle is congruent to this angle. I also know that this angle is congruent to this angle. And I also know that this angle is congruent to this angle. That wasn't shown at first, but I know it to be true because of CPCTC. Since the triangles are congruent, then all the parts of the triangles have to be congruent. Okay? So we use that a lot in proofs. Keep that in mind. So let's actually look at a proof. Proofs can be done in several ways. It can be done as a paragraph, it can be done as a flow chart, but the most common proof is a two-column proof. And this is what it looks like. And the reason they call it a two-column proof is because it has two columns. Very simple. Okay? And you'll have your list of things. We'll start with the four-step proof. And basically what you're doing is explaining yourself. Think about when you cook something. You know, you have like, if you're cooking spaghetti, you start with, in the South, we start with hamburger meat, we fry it up, and we throw in some tomato sauce and some tomatoes and some spices, but you do one step at a time. That's what this is. It's basically like a recipe for solving a math problem in a sense. So let's look at an example. Let's say I have a picture that looks like this. And I know automatically that angle A is congruent to angle C. And that angle ADB and angle CDB, stands for these two angles, are right angles. And that stands for right angles. Okay? So I automatically know. This is what we call the given. This is what I'm told in the beginning, in the proof. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to prove that side AB, this is how we label segments, side AB is congruent to side BC. This may be more than 4 steps, but that's okay. I want to prove that AB is congruent to BC. Okay? So basically what we're doing here, we're going to start here, and we're going to see what it takes to get to here. So you always start with your given. So your statement 1 is going to be whatever you started with. So I'm just going to rewrite all that. Angle A is congruent to angle C. And I also know that angle ADB and angle CDB are right angles. Okay? So the statement is like what it is. And then your reasons are, how do I know that this is true? Okay? So how do I know that all this stuff is true? Well, they gave it to me, right? So my reason for all this is that it is given in the beginning. So your first step is usually going to be whatever your given is, and your reason is given. Then you just go step by step from there. Well, look at this figure, okay? Automatically I know these two are congruent and these two are right angles. Now before I can actually say, well, if they're right angles, what do you know about right angles? They're 90 degrees, right? So if they're both 90 degrees, they have to be congruent. So now I can say that these two angles are congruent. So angle ADB is congruent to angle CDB. You have to be able to say that because you can't just automatically assume they're congruent. You got to show each little step, just like a recipe. You can't assume that the person knows, to put the noodles in at the second step. You have to tell them that. So I'm saying, okay, since these are right angles, then they have to be congruent. So then you get to your reason step. How do I know they're congruent? We just said a minute ago, they are what kind of angles? Right angles. So the reason they're congruent is because of the definition of right angles. Right angles are congruent. Okay? Alright, so now we know we've got a pair of congruent angles here. We've got a pair of congruent angles here. Just kind of look at your figure. In order for the segments to be congruent, the triangles have to be congruent. So we've got to figure out a way to prove the triangle's congruent. If you look at segment BD, okay, it's part of this triangle as well as part of this triangle, so it's really congruent to itself, like we learned in one video. Okay, so I can put a little symbol there, and I tell myself that segment BD is congruent to itself. So BD is congruent to BD. Now there's a certain property we use for that. And if you think about it, when you look into a mirror, you see your reflection, right? Well, it's like BD is looking into a mirror. It's called the reflexive property. So a slight different word, but it's actually called the reflexive property. So basically, anytime you're proving something congruent to itself, which means these two things would be the same, it is always the reflexive property. We are going to have actually one more step to this. I'm going to go ahead and write it down here for step 5. So we get to our next one. If you look at these two triangles, you've got, we had 5 different. We have side, 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 angle, side, angle, angle, side, and HL. You think, well, it might could be HL, but you only have one segment congruent, so there's no way it's HL. So you look at something else. You've got angle, then you've got an angle, and then you've got a side. That's angle, angle, side. So I know the triangles are congruent. So I write that the triangles are congruent. So triangle ADB is congruent to triangle. And we did ADB, so we need to do CDB because the order of the letters does matter. Triangle CDB. Now, how do I know those triangles are congruent? We just said it a minute ago. Angle, angle, side. So my step 4 over here is going to be angle, angle, side. So, now I know the triangles are congruent, and like we learned earlier with CPCTC, if the triangles are congruent, then everything else has to be congruent. So now I can say that AB is congruent to BC. And the reason I know that is CPCTC. The corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Now we've gotten from this all the way to here, and we're done with our proof.